Hello, students. Let us begin a new chapter in Vistas on the face of it, written by Susan Hill. So, first of all, about the author. Susan Hill is an English author of fiction and non fiction works. Her novels include The Woman in Black, The Mist in the Mirror, and I Am the King of the Castle, for which she received the Somerset Maugham Award in 1971. Now, let us have the introduction to the lesson on the face of it. The story is about a teenage boy, Derry, who has a burnt face, and Mr. Lamb, who is a disabled old man with an artificial leg made of tin. Derry accidentally enters his garden so that he can hide himself from people who hate him because of his ugly face. Mr. Lamb not only welcomes him in his garden but also encourages him to lead a normal life, leaving behind his past. Dear students, now let us have the summary of the lesson on the face of it. The story begins with a teenage boy entering a garden. His face is burnt on one side due to an accident when acid fell on half of his face. He has gone there to hide himself as he is afraid of facing people. He fears being teased by others for having such a face, but when he enters, he finds someone already present there. He tries to leave the place, but he is stopped by the old man, Mr. Lamb, the owner of the garden. Derry feels guilty for entering the garden without permission. Mr. Lamb welcomes him and he tells him not to leave just because of his presence. Derry wants to leave as he thinks people don't like his face and moreover, they get afraid of his looks. But Mr. Lamb insists him to stay there. They enter into a conversation that how Derry is not liked by anyone and how he hates people behaving like this with him. Mr. Lamb tries to console him. He tells him that he has a thin leg and kids make fun of him. Still, he is not depressed and enjoys his life. They both talk about various things, and this leads to revelation of Derry's fear, depression, and hatred about his being in such condition. But Mr. Lamb keeps on telling him to think of the positive things. Soon they become friends, and Mr. Lamb asks him to help him in plucking the crab apples of his garden. Derry tells him that he had come too far from his home and hadn't told anything about this to his mother. Mr. Lamb tells him to take permission from his mother. Derry finds it difficult, and this leads to a small quarrel between both of them. At last, Derry tells him that he would come back after taking his mother's permission. His mother does not want him to go back, but he comes back again to fulfill his promise. Meanwhile, Mr. Lamb climbs the ladder on his own to pluck the crab apples as he was sure that Derry would not return. He was disabled and it was difficult for him to climb. Mr. Lamb falls from his ladder and dies. Derry, on the other hand, returns to the garden to help him. When he enters the garden, he sees Mr. Lamb lying on the ground. Derry tries hard to make him move but did not get any response from him. Finally, he comes to know that he is dead and starts crying. So, dear students, this is the summary of the chapter. Now, let us continue the chapter with the explanations of the lesson on the face of it. So, there are some scenes. So, scene 1 begins here. Mr. Lamb's garden. There is the occasional sound of bird song and of tree leaves rustling. Derry's footsteps are heard as he walks slowly and tentatively through the long grass. He pauses, then walks again. He comes round a screen of bushes so that when Mr. Lamb speaks to him, he is close at hand and Derry is startled. Startled means surprised. Occasional means here sometimes. Rustling means whisper or low sound. Tentatively means hesitatingly or without confidence. Startled means feeling a sudden shock or surprised. Now, explanation begins. The narrator describes the setting of scene 1. The location is Mr. Lamb's garden. One can occasionally hear the birds singing and the low sound of the tree leaves. Derry, a young boy, enters the garden hesitantly. When he comes out of the bushes, he is surprised to hear Mr. Lamb talking to him. Now, the scene begins, or conversation begins in this way. Mr. Lamb, mind the apples. Derry, what? Who is that? Who is there? Mr. Lamb, Lamb's my name. Mind the apples, crab apples, those are windfalls in the long grass you could trip. Derry, I? There? I thought this was an empty place. I didn't know there was anybody here. Mr. Lamb, that's all right. I'm here. What are you afraid of, boy? That's all right. Derry says, I thought it was empty, an empty house. Mr. Lamb, so it is. Since I'm out here in the garden, it is empty until I go back inside. In the meantime, I'm out here and likely to stop a day like this beautiful day, not a day to be indoors. Derry, panic. I have got to go. So, dear students, some meanings are here. Crab apples means a small sour apple. Windfalls means unexpected gain or jackpot. Let us have the explanation of the above dialogues. Mr. Lamb warns him about the crab apples that usually fell in the long grass from the tree above. Derry was shocked on hearing a voice. He asked as to who it was. Mr. Lamb introduced himself and also said that small sour apples, known as crab apples, had fallen on the ground. If Derry could not be careful while walking through the grass, he could trip over them and get hurt. Derry said that he didn't know that someone was present in the garden. He thought it to be empty, and even the house seemed empty to him. Mr. Lamb tried to comfort him by saying that the house was empty as he was out in the garden. He also asked him not to be afraid. Derry wanted to leave the place. So, dear students, further explanations will be made in the next lecture. Thank you.